Real cowboys come together to celebrate the life they experience. The celebration isn't very different from the experience, just a little more fun.
Good girl. This here, hey, kiss. Kiss. Good horse. Yeah.
How long have you been breaking horses?
Oh man, I started breaking them for Warren Broth down at Rifle in 1932. 1932, we was breaking them. We broke 2 horses for him. I did in my summer vacation. Yeah, we got spending money. He paid our way to the movie once a week. That was a nickel, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
30.
That horse looks smart, though. Look how flat he is between the eyes. You know, this horse here breaks some right here. And here, too, it's crowned. See, it's crowned.
You don't like that?
No, I like them flat. And I like their eyes far apart and their ears fairly far apart. I've been a horse lover and a wild horse lover all my life. Every time you see a man, you think more of your horse. You know what I'm saying? I've seen horses do things that people don't even do that I know is right. A wild horses once a year. You can take these domestic horses down in the Krell and in the lower country.
Feed them good.
Feed them good and the right stuff. And I had a mare that used to horse 12 months a year.
Yep.
Mainly when you're trying to shoe her. Wow.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah. What a group of jolly cowboys. One day when work was done, decided they would head to town to have a little fun. As they rode gaily down the trail, hear the old cook say, I'll hang the key on the bunkhouse door and boys don't be late. Oh, we were talking about the wagon, the Goodnight wagon. Charlie Goodnight invented, and he finally went commercial with it, and all the ranchers wanted one of them. What made them unique was that box on the back, and the rear end lay down on a leg and made a table out of it, and the boxes and little bins that stored the different things they needed. We talked about the wagon and how the water barrel was on there for the cook to cook out of. I know I used to see a movie and see him with about 1,000 head of cattle in that barrel of water. I wondered how they watered the horses and them cows. But the Goodnight Trail was a good example, and Loving Goodnight, I should say Loving too, because they found how you could bring them cattle and they could water them out of the river. So that water was for the cook to use, and the cook would go in there. He was the boss, and he would say where the cattle holed up, where they stayed for the night. And but this wagon had virtually everything that was needed for a 5 or 6 month trip for 6 or 7, 8 cowboys. And they had their shovels and their tools and their grease for their axle grease and everything on a toolbox to offset the weight from the water. And then the cover of the wagon was taken down unless it was a rain or a storm of some kind, and all the bedrolls were stored in there. Oh, hang the key on the bunkhouse door, we'll be late tonight. Don't leave the light a-burning here, we may not look right. The camp cook would say where they were going to stop, where they're going to hold the cattle for the night, and then he had a 60-foot radius there that was his domain. And he built the campfire. He built it where he wanted it. And he was the one that enforced the rules of the camp. Trail is long, going stuff, and someone might get time. Hang the key on the bunkhouse door, we'll be late tonight. If you go out on the trail 7 or 8 people for 7 months, there has to be some etiquette. You're not going to get along. I mean, and if it's 500 miles to the closest town, you can't get mad and quit. Well, city girls are a lot of fun. They can't see our ways. Swinging through the old square days on the morning way. The movies, the way they've made the John Wayne movies and all the books making the cowboy wild, drunk, and disorderly, that's all a myth. Number one, there was no whiskey allowed on a trail drive, and most cowboy outfits on the ranch. If you wanted to drink, you went to town and but there was none there. Now, they had whiskey on the trail rides in the chuck wagon, but the cook had control of it. And some of them cooks has been known to get to ailing about every day, but he had control of the whiskey, and he used it for medicinal purposes only. And by the way, he was the doctor. The cook was the doctor, and he was the veterinarian. And he was usually an old man that got too old to ride, and he went along as cook, and he was usually pretty cranky. Dressed in chaplain, jingling spurs, sing with all our might. Hang the key on the bunkhouse door, we'll be late tonight. And there was lots of beans. Beans didn't need refrigeration. And there was a lot of pork. In those days, and even up to when I was a youngster, my dad cured pork in a barrel in a brine, and he made that brine to where it would float an egg, and then he put that in there, that ham in there 17 days, and when you took it out, you could hang it on the side of the house for a year, and it didn't spoil, the flies didn't get it. It was cured. And that was their bacon that they hauled along, and they took lots of dried apples, sacks and sacks of apples. They had apple pie at his partner every day. And they had lots of beef. They had beef for breakfast, or they stew you could add to it. They had a lot of stew. And the beef came from the cattle that got lame or injured along the way. There was a lot, and the only vegetation they had was from the lamb's quarter, some kind of weeds that grew that they could get. And the eggs that they got were from bird nests. They would break eggs, and if they were good, they used them. Oh, hang the key on the bunkhouse door, we'll be late tonight. I'll leave the light a burning, dear, we may not look right. You never, ever ride a horse downwind into camp. That's common sense with anybody. The sand, the dust from the horse gets in the beans and the food and in the beds. You make a little circle around camp and come in, and you step off of your horse. You take care of your horse. If he needs a little rubbing down, you do that. You water him, you feed him before you go eat. Trail is long, so it's tough when someone might get time. Hang the key on the bunkhouse door, we'll be late tonight. And a cowboy ate with his hat on. When a cowboy got up in the morning, the first thing he put on was his hat. It's a protective device from the weather, from the rain, the sun, and he put it on, and they all wore the bandana. And then you put your spurs on, and you leave them spurs on all night. You never get on a horse without your spurs. But the bandana, they use them for a bandage, a tourniquet. They use them for a sling if they got an injured arm. In the blizzard where there's sand, they tied it across their face. And if they had cold weather where there was a blizzard, they used it. I've seen them dry dishes on it. I mean, it was one of the most important part of their clothing was that thing right there. Oh, hang key on the bunkhouse door, we'll be late tonight. I'll leave the light a burning, dear, we may not look right. Really long going tough when someone might get tight. They know a horse. They know about him. They know how to doctor him. They know how to doctor a cow. And they know that a horse will drink from 7 to 9 gallons of water a day. Now, in the wintertime, if there's snow, they won't drink very little, if any. Or if it rains and they pick up grass, they won't drink. And if it's hotter, they'll drink a little bit more. But if you're just figuring how much does a horse drink, you can safely say 7 to 9 gallon of water on a 1,000-pound horse. And the way my dad used to tell me to figure how much hay to put up for a horse for the winter, you count the months that you're going to feed that horse hay. And if you give him all the hay he wants, and don't let him waste any, and he doesn't have any grain, he'll eat his weight every 30 days. There is no such thing as an instant cowboy. There's no such thing as an overnight cowboy. You have to go on and on and on for years and years and years to learn these things that the cowboy knows and does.
My string broke.
Off to the side, and not even off the record, but George, when I first went to Idaho, we were running horses. And I just got to see it a couple times, and being the guy they drug the bad ones to. But what impressed me most was the old boys that were just on the payroll and had been running those horses for a long time, and they didn't make any money one way or the other. So I wrote this for them. The chase. The race is on. The Mustangs in the lead. The cowboys hot behind the band like centaurs blurred with speed. The horses' necks are wringing wet from keeping up the pace, and tears cut tracks into the dust upon the rider's face. But what a time, when him and I ran hard across the land, me breathing heavy down his neck, him wearing no man's brand. No papers gave us ownership to all the ground we trod, but it belonged to me and him, as sure as there's a God. And if I could, I'd wish for him and for myself likewise to finally cross the great divide away from prying eyes. So in the end, he has a chance to die with dignity, his carcass laid to rest out there where living he ran free, and coyotes chew his moldered bones, a fitting epilogue, instead of smashed up in a can for someone's townhouse dog. For you, George.
Thank you.
You run them, by gosh.
Kind of strikes a nerve, don't it?
Well, you know, I spend a lifetime being inspired by people like you.
Thank you.
And I make a living at it, strange as that may seem.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to run into somebody like you who lends a little authenticity to all these terrible stories that I tell.
Yeah. Thank you. There might be stories I cannot write. Some of them living, they haven't all died. I bet all my money the man ain't alive who can stay on strawberry when he makes that right side.
Worked 4 hours on my hair and went off and forgot it. Well, she's done and gone away, kicked the bucket yesterday. My cross-eyed gal laid on the hill. She took sweet man and died, now I hope she's satisfied. But she doesn't hold our thing against my will. This old cowboy was standing in a bar. One of these dance hall girls come up there and said, I'll do it. Hey, the joke ain't over.
Now she's heard it.
Done heard that joke.
Yeah, she's heard it. You started another one.
She's my darling, my daisy, pigeon-toed half-wit, she's crazy. Cross-eyed gal that lived on the hill. Made me think of my uncle. The horse kicked him in the head, and right up on top of his head, and they put a steel plate in his head and sewed it back up, and it got well. Now every time he passes the refrigerator, all them little things jump over on his head.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
The little magnets.
Them little magnets.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all on his head. When I was a kid, I used to like picking them off, putting them back on the refrigerator.
He was a good guy, I bet.
They laid her down to rest, I'll fulfill her last request. I plant a bunch of onions on her grave.
I believe I knew him. He was the one that told me he was married so long they were on their second bottle of Tabasco.
So when I'm passing by, I can hook her up and cry. For the darn thing simply make me rage. She said goodbye to me as she sat up on my knee. She said she'd meet me on the other shore. But I took it as a joke, didn't think that she would croak. She never died so suddenly before. My uncle, when he got married, he told my aunt they agreed everything would be 50-50. And it was. They had 12 kids, and 6 of them was his. My darling, my daisy, pigeon-toed, half-wit, she's crazy. Cross-eyed gal that lived on the hill. The cowboy rode up the other and said, "You see the sunset tonight?" And he said, "Why, is it missing?" Cross-eyed gal that lived on the hill. One-liner.
Yes. Well, you know a few, 1,000. don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a few of them. You know, I get them from my wife.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She lets me tell people I'm boss once in a while.
They laid her down to rest off a pillar last week when.
You know, when I was dating her, I'll never forget one night we was dating, and she said, we're seeing too much of each other, so I turned off the light.
I'll plant a bunch of onions on her grave.
She said, are you a cowboy? He said, yep. Said, a real cowboy? Said, yeah, real cowboy. Said, well, there's some questions I'd like answered. Why do you wear that great big old hat? And the cowboy said, well, it's a protective device. Keeps the sun and the rain off, and, you know, it's a protective device. She said, well, how come the tennis shoes? And he said, well, I don't want nobody thinking I'm a truck driver.
So when I'm passing by, I can pucker up and cry. The darn thing simply makes me rave. Make me rave.